¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo están ustedes? Buenas tardes. Vamos a conversar con Christopher Lingle, que es economista norteamericano, PhD en Economics de la Universidad de Georgia, sobre la libertad y la democracia. Estamos comprobando a ver si podemos conectarnos con él. Vamos a charlar sobre esta temática que se repite, hi Chris, que se repite siempre de la pelea, ahora parece que va a ser compatible, entre libertad y democracia a lo largo del mundo. Vamos a ver si podemos lograr la charla con él técnicamente. Había habido algunos problemas. Hey Chris.
Hola.
Aparentemente. How are you doing?
Great, wonderful. But I'm better now that I see you.
Oh, okay, me too. How are you doing? Where are you now?
Costa Rica, San Jose.
Okay. Yeah, I ask you because you're always in a different part of the world. You're a real globetrotter.
Be careful because I'm getting closer to you now.
Okay. You came many times to Argentina. Well, now Argentina is a little bit worse than when you have been here before. Okay, aparentemente la conexión no es muy buena. Apparently, Chris, your connection is not very good. But we're going to try to start talking about your PhD in economics.
Better.
Yes. Okay.
Is that better?
Puede ser, maybe, yes. Mm-hmm. Now it seems better, yes.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, thank you for the opportunity of talking to you once again, now in the COVID era, far away from Argentina or the US. Now it's perfect, I think, the connection. Yes, okay, now it is perfect. Yeah. Christopher Lingle is PhD in economics. He graduated from the University of Georgia. He's visiting professor of la Universidad Francisco Marroquín en Guatemala también, y él es un intelectual un freedom intellectual, un intelectual de la libertad, y quisiéramos que nos cuentes un poquito sobre vos y lo que estás. What are you doing now and where? You told us you're in Costa Rica.
Yes, but I'm semi-retired. And but I'm still a missionary for liberty. So I travel around the world to try to promote libertarian ideas.
Okay. Are you living now in Costa Rica?
No, I leave on Wednesday to go to Lubbock, Texas for a Liberty Fund colloquium. And I'll be there just for a few days. And then I go to Panama.
Okay. You're not tired. Never tired.
No. Always moving.
Wow. And how do you see freedom in the world nowadays?
Well, I've become very pessimistic about the COVID policies, the pandemic policies. I think they've been exaggerated as a way for governments to expand their powers, which means whenever governments expand their powers, we have less choice and less freedom. So I'm a bit pessimistic, and I'm really surprised that that so many people have accepted these expansions of political power without resistance. So I don't know how we go from here, and it's divided libertarian community in a way that no other set of policies has done. So there's not a lot of reason to be optimistic at the moment. We have to wait and see how it plays out.
Okay, and specifically in the USA, how do you see? Do you think that democracy is winning against republic nowadays?
Well, I think everywhere. In a way, what we're beginning to see is that it's being revealed that democracy has certain internal and fatal contradictions. That is, the tendency for the citizens to want to use democracy as a way of acquiring redistribution or privilege to them, whether it be a corporation or a special interest group or trade union, whatever it may be. This has led to democracy being an instrument not to promote liberty, but as an instrument to deliver redistribution of income and wealth. Mm-hmm. And so what we're seeing then is, as I will discuss, I believe that this is really weakening democracy, and it weakens people's sort of commitment to democracy. And it's very unfortunate that it's happened this way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you have, for example, a position about the Biden, Trump, and libertarians' position, a view about Biden, Trump, libertarian position about this situation, this global situation, and specifically talking about the COVID policies in the US. Can we identify different opinions in these three parties about this point?
Well, the problem is Trump made an absolute mess out of the policies. He had as he is normally, he cannot be consistent. He did not really use the situation as a way of unifying people and trying to create a unified message. Now, Biden has come in and has his unified message is not a unifying message. His unified message is of repression. That is, he wants to create a caste system or a system of apartheid where people who agree with him or his political party in this particular case, they will be accepted as normal individuals, whereas people who have perhaps good medical reasons, or they have ideological reasons, or they simply do not believe that governments should be the decider about personal health questions. So what's happened is that Biden has tried to create two classes of people, vaccinated and unvaccinated. And they've used, I believe, misleading and misguided interpretations of this pandemic as a political tool. This isn't about public health. This is about politics. This is about the expansion of political power using an excuse of a crisis to expand political power and to take away resources from citizens. And they've been very effective all over the world, unfortunately. Even in the best democracies of Western Europe and North America, the government officials have been able to repress their citizens and through propaganda, fear, and now hatred, because what's happening is that fear was quite an effective tool in all of these countries to promote their policies. But now they want to take it a step further. Biden's vaccine mandate is going to be based upon encouraging people that are vaccinated to hate people that are unvaccinated, or to fear them, or to treat them differently, to treat them with less respect. So this is a very bad outcome.
Okay, it's really clear. And beyond COVID policies, how do you see the U.S. now in terms of freedom?
Well, what we're seeing, again, one of the problems with democracy is that it creates incentives for politicians to divide people. And again, as I mentioned, this one type of division was between vaccinated and unvaccinated. But what we've seen in the recent past is that the redistributive policies, the policies of redistribution of income and wealth, have divided Americans, and I think people in all democratic countries, into several categories. One category, the people who receive from the state, and the other category are the people who must pay for the benefits or the subsidies or the protections of these other people. Now, what this does over time, when there was a small amount of this, it's not a big problem because people are willing to perhaps overlook. They say, well, this is just part of the democratic process, and I accept it. But as the burden of taxation, the burden of regulation increases, and the sphere of liberty decreases, there begins to be these deep divisions. So what we are seeing in the United States are what you could almost call tribal politics. We're dividing people into two tribes. We've got one tribe who are the receivers, and the other people who are faced with the obligation to provide whatever the state demands of them. This is not the way democracy was originally conceived to be. It was never understood that the state would have the first claim over people's income. And this is what's happened now. The state decides on how much you will pay, and they allow you to keep whatever's left. So, I mean, the people who are productive begin to resent and resist this. So this is why I believe we see these deep partisan divisions developing in the United States. And this is very troubling. People talk about civil wars almost as armed conflict instead of simply political conflict. And it's becoming more and more, the positions are becoming more and more rigid, one against the other. And this is not because Americans are bad people or people living in any particular democracy, but it's because politicians have driven them into these sort of divided positions. And they're to blame for this. But they wanted to blame the deplorables, or the lazy people, or illegal immigrants. So what happens is that we should never give in to the sort of divisive politics, the dividing politics that politicians are constantly putting forth.
We take many times the U.S. as an example, as an inspiration. And my question is the check and balances system is still alive, protecting our individual rights there?
Well, the checks and balances works best in terms of balancing the distribution of power between the different branches of government. But it doesn't necessarily restrain the amount of power that's being divided among those different branches. So whereas and this is very interesting, in the vaccine mandate that was issued by the Biden administration, the legislative branch of government is not covered by that because of this division of powers. The executive branch cannot mandate what the legislative branch does when it comes to health care, personal health issues, or anything else, which is, in a way, a good thing. But the problem is we've got this expanded overall political power that is granted and that is distributed among the different branches. So, yes, on one hand, the checks and balances are working within the given power structures, but we're not seeing sufficient limits being placed on the total amount of political power that's available to each of those branches.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. And talking a little bit about the American policies in the world, you have a position about Afghanistan situation and the American position about Afghanistan?
Well, we should never have been in Afghanistan, at least certainly not the way we were. The America has been too committed to promoting democracy and less focus on promoting liberty. The idea of trying to impose a democratic government on a country that is divided by tribal allegiances, by religious differences. We have the Sunni and Shia differences that complicate matters, the different language groupings in Afghanistan. There's an old expression, it's the graveyard of empires. And whether it was the British or the Soviet Empire, and now the American Empire has been brought to their knees by these very sort of dedicated small groups of evangelical people that are willing to make greater sacrifices than we were. And America squandered billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. We ruined our reputation because allies that might have trusted us to support them will worry that the U.S. will not have sufficient will to carry out its commitments. The whole thing in Afghanistan was a disaster. Actually, in the few months at the beginning of the American interventions, there were very few troops on the ground, and they had much more success in pushing back the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda forces. But once you try to establish a standing army, well, it becomes a fixed target that's very easy to wear down. In the beginning, it was the CIA and some special forces units that were highly mobile, that blended in with the population, that understood the needs and requirements, the immediate needs and requirements of the population. And they were reasonably successful in a sort of low-level sort of police action, you might say, that tried to curb the excesses of the Al-Qaeda forces there and tried to communicate to the Taliban that if they don't take care of the internal terrorism, that outside forces will. So that would have been a much better strategy. But of course, what happened is that the military-industrial complex was able to flex its muscles and influence American policy, and where we sent thousands of young men and women to their grave and wasted hundreds of billions of dollars. Terrible.
And do you think that products and services moving globally are better ambassadors of freedom than the army?
Oh, absolutely. Whenever there has been any success of the American presence in other countries with military, it's because they brought with them the sort of concepts of freedom and access to the kind of material goods that the American citizens and soldiers might have, whether it was in, for example, the Panama Canal, where people could see, that the American standard of living was one that people could aspire to. This is not to suggest that America should control the Panama Canal, but their presence there had a beneficial effect, I think, in the sense that people saw, well, if you live under these conditions of freedom, if you live under these conditions of global capitalism, you can prosper. So I think that I would agree with your remark that the free flow of not only goods and services, but also capital are really a civilizing force on the world. And what we saw until COVID, until the pandemic came about, we saw a relentless decrease in absolute poverty around the world. For the first time in human history, absolute poverty went below 10%. But what we see is the destructive force of governments where they have been able to reverse that almost overnight. Poverty rates are going back up. We see unemployment rate, misery, crime going back up, the destruction of the mental well-being of communities around the world through the destructive force of politics. And some of it driven by democracy or democracies and supported in many ways by even the majority of the citizens. We have these terrible situations in New Zealand and Australia where they support these dictatorial policies of these democratically elected politicians, which I think is remarkable, but it's also troubling. Australia and New Zealand joined Cuba and North Korea as the only countries in the world where you have to beg the government to come or go. It's unheard of in a democratic regime that you cannot leave your country whenever you wish to. But that's not the case in New Zealand or Australia at the present time. So these are very troubling trends to me. And the fact that in some cases, a majority of the population actually support this repression without realizing how much liberty they have lost, and that liberty that will not be available to their children or their grandchildren. I think there's going to be a great deal of what we call buyer's remorse, where people are going to regret that they accepted this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chris, it was a great, amazing opportunity to talk to you and talk about freedom, the state of freedom, and we hope to see you soon personally again. I see you, and well.
My best to all the gauchos and porteños and all my friends there, and in Rosario and all around Argentina. I miss you all. And I hope to come back someday soon. I would come now if it were an easy place to come to, but pandemic policies are making it hard to travel everywhere.
It's are very restricted here, especially. Yes, you're a criminal too if you want to fly. Terrible.
Well,
so
and congratulations to our friends in the recent election, Javier seems to have done well with his party, so I hope there's some good news in November, I think, is when the general election comes. So
yeah,
best of luck.
Well, we are really glad about that results. We are hopeful we can that freedom could be one step beyond as a consequence of this result. So we are very happy, and we thank you very much. And I don't know if you want to say some last words.
No, that's enough from me. Thanks so much.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Ciao.
See you. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay. Ciao.